fun stuff. Yeah, I just saw her like a week and a half ago. I went out to her house to get a signature from Luke, and I was just like,
Oh,
look at
okay.
Miss Heritatis doing good.
She was quirky.
Quirky is a really good way to describe her.
I liked her though.
She has like a group of like a almost like a small music festival of folks up
Okay.
north that like are starting to disband. I was like, hey, if I can help like bring that together, let me know. Like if you've got a bunch of people that just love this stuff and like they're
Yeah.
just looking for another venue, like let's see if we can bring them to Carbondale.
Yeah.
But
That would be like a. Oh, that'd be hilarious. Actually, probably.
do you ever get your vehicle worked on at Gator Tire? Have you ever been okay? So Karen is the woman who runs Gator Tire, and
Okay.
she just kind of wears this jumpsuit. Like she's a mechanic, and she just wears the jumpsuit. And when I went over to Kim, because I feel comfortable calling her Kim now, it's like I've reached that pinnacle of adulthood where we're on first name basis instead of Mr. Miss. And she was wearing a similar jumpsuit. I was like, yes, get out there and get with it. Miss Heritatis, like get at the she was just kicking the yard's butt and like cutting firewood and like raking leaves and just getting to it. And I was like,
That's awesome.
is that like aspirational?
It doesn't surprise me about her, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
She was entertaining in class, but I know that there wasn't like I feel like not a lot of students liked her.
Yeah, it was.
Honestly.
I mean, it was when you're kids and you like don't know how to interface with a broad swath of adults.
Yeah.
Like, what is awesome now that you like look back on
Yep.
it, may not have been as awesome to
Yeah.
deal with. Like, I can think of high school teachers and college professors kind of all in the same boat. It's like as you get
Yeah.
older, you start to realize like, here's how.
Yeah.
Do you wonder if like you might have students that feel that way at some point too? Like, okay, now that I'm growing older, I understand more of what Miss. Is it Jamieson?
Jameson.
Or Jamieson, just plain
Yeah.
old Jameson. Very good. I like literally read it as like Jamie son.
Yeah.
And like,
Like
or do
the-
I read it through as Jameson?
Irish whiskey.
There you go.
Or
Is that-
or a porn star.
Is that how the? Thank you.
One of the two.
Thank you for bridging that topic, so I didn't have to. Was that okay? So I got picked on in high school for any number of things, but like, with the name, was that like
Yeah.
always a point of contention?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, because we grew up when Jenna Jameson was super famous.
Yeah.
So like now though, like the kids have no clue. Like any of my students, no, they have no clue. But every single person in our generation,
Yeah.
and like a couple generations before and a couple generations after, they
Still
know.
close. That's
Even like some older people don't even know. Like maybe older baby boomers don't really realize. It's like but she was just so famous in the 90s
yeah.
that, yeah, that I have a porn star name.
That's phenomenal. And that's that is where we kick off episode 19 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives and sometimes their interesting names, and tie it all back to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. And my guest is another fellow townie, Jenna Jamieson. The Carbondale Jenna Jamieson.
Yeah, not the porn star.
I love the fact that it just completely washes over your students' heads.
Yeah, it completely washes over students' heads. They have no idea. However, ask anybody that grew up in the 90s or even the 80s, and they know exactly who you're talking about. Jenna Jameson?
I get it. Did you? We were talking about you being a school teacher and just school activity a little bit ago. But running through this, were you a District 95 kid all through and through, and you just currently live in Giant City District now, or were you a Giant City kid too?
Well, I actually wasn't a Carbondale person at all when I grew up.
Okay.
I went to Goreville.
Oh no! I mean, perfectly fine.
I went to Goreville and Century, which both small schools south of Carbondale, and then I begged my mom to move to Carbondale so that I could have more diversity. So here I am in Carbondale, Illinois, as a teacher at Carbondale High School.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, well, I mean, and arguably, I'm sure that that your classrooms before your mom moved to Carbondale looked real white.
They did. Yes, they were very white. In fact, that's one. It just felt like you stuck out like a sore thumb
Yeah.
when you were a student like me, in Goreville.
Have you had students that have come from other school districts that have had similar experiences to yours, and you like finally get to warm them up to the idea that they're not the only black or brown person like in their world around them?
I think, yeah, we actually have lots of students that come from other districts that are smaller because if you think of Carbondale High School, we're one of the bigger districts in in Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that there's lots, and most of the other rural high schools are small and not very diverse. So when you come from a small high school like Goreville and you come to Carbondale, the diversity and difference is just through the roof.
Yeah.
And I mean, just in terms of the opportunities, the clubs that they offer, the sports that they offer, the classes that they offer, the electives that you have. I don't think that students in Carbondale High School realize how lucky they are
Yeah.
to have so many electives because we have more electives than most students have.
Like
From
classes, even like
yeah.
you guys have more electives
Yeah.
than.
Just like construction and automotive and art and ceramics and all those, I think the students take for granted.
Yeah.
So
Now I remember. So were you '07 as well, or were you '06?
I was '06.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just verifying. At some point in time, you get so old that it all just starts to blend together.
Yeah.
Unless you're Matt Wilson and you can't give up
I'll
being '09.
I'll
as
take
a
07 though.
personal attack, Matt Wilson, I will see you answer that call on this podcast in the near future. But it all starts to blend together. But I remember, I mean, when the construction class built what is like the greenhouse and some of the other stuff out back now, like people got to do the thing that they wanted to do. Like it wasn't just read a book or whatever. It was like execute.
Yeah. And it's still like that at Carbondale High School, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And we were one of the first classes to be over in that building. We lucky enough got to be in the old building and the new building if you were '06.
Yeah. You guys,
Yep.
I was the
Yep.
first clean
You
sweep
got
all
to
the
be
way
the
through.
clean sweep all the way
Closed
through, but
campus.
we got to be that open campus that moved to closed campus. But even still today, they still build stuff. They built some of those tiny houses that they used to auction off in the Marion Mall,
Oh, really? Okay.
and now they've built some sheds for some area school districts and things like that. So they're still doing things like that in the construction classes.
Oh, that's
So it's kind of cool.
there are nonprofit organizations are always looking for free labor wherever they can find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean volunteer labor. And I hadn't even thought about how do you tap the high school, right? Everybody's always looking to
Yeah.
SIU and sometimes to the unions and whatever else, but like there's an active base of high school students that are capable
Yeah.
and like really itching to learn and put their hands on stuff.
Yep. And like they just started doing lots of 3D printing, stuff like that. So I think a lot of places during COVID or a lot of hospitals were developing masks and things, straps for masks using 3D printers. So I know that Carbondale High School did a ton of that kind of stuff to donate to area medical places. So.
That's great. Did you had you always been interested in like being a teacher, or is this something that just kind of
No.
oops, I'm a teacher now?
No, I actually went to school and majored in economics.
Okay.
So financial economics, and then I got a master's in public health. And I actually didn't go to school to be a teacher, and I don't know that I ever thought I would ever be a teacher, even though my mom was a teacher for 35 years in special education. But I ended up at the right place at the right time and ended up getting a provisional license, which would allow me to teach business classes and medical classes. So based on my experience in the outside world, or like what most people consider the real world, because when you're in a school, a lot of times we equate school world and then we equate real world or outside world. So basically I was at the right place at the right time, and then I had to track all my hours in order to prove that I had experience in business and in healthcare and medical. And I think it was like 8,000 or 12,000 hours. Once I proved all that and I got signatures from every single supervisor that tracked every single hour down to the last hour, then I could apply for a provisional license so that I was able to teach. And then that's how I ended up here. But I didn't start teaching until I was, 28, 29. So it's not like I've necessarily been a teacher my whole life, which is what some people might think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that approach to this is so very like needed, right? A real world application of skills in a teaching environment, not just at the higher education level, but at the grade and high school level. And I had like talking to your OJT class. How was that? That was last week already. I don't know time, and I was just like, wow, I legitimately was there in Gwen Poor's class 15, 14 years ago, whatever it was now. And it's like, I get it. Like, I get how this is supposed to work and why somebody like yourself is so valuable in that role. So, I mean, how you must have had a really good relationship with like former bosses and stuff to be able to go back and get that much hours, those hours tracked like that.
I did. So that was the key to getting my provisional license. And I think, honestly, and I appreciate your respect that you actually think it's cool that I did that, because honestly, I think coming from the outside world and then going into a school, there may not necessarily be a positive interpretation of that. I didn't go through a teacher education program or TEP program. So I didn't go to school and spend 4 years at SIU in their teacher program learning how to do behavior management or learn how to properly format a 6-page lesson plan. But I think I still am capable of being an effective teacher. I don't think every single person that goes to school to be a teacher is necessarily an effective teacher, just like every person from the outside world couldn't come in and be an effective teacher. I think you just develop a skill set, or you have a skill set within yourself or a drive within yourself that allows you to want to communicate and inspire other individuals. And I hope that's what I have. That's what I'm striving for, even if I don't have it yet. That's my goal.
Boom, that's the podcast. Shut it down. Usually they're an hour, but now we're checking out at 12:45. No, I mean that's to recognize that the right people belong in the right positions, right? And really your personality and dry but flavorful approach. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
you're very like cut and to the point and can communicate that well, but you do it in a way that just draws in your audience, whether that's just one in professional settings or in that student setting. And you're just like, okay, and then we're moving to the next function. And if you're not following along with Jenna at this point, guess what, buddy, you're gonna have to catch up later. So you better be paying attention to the Jenna show right now. And it is knowledge on the board. Like I think that's something that's valuable, that like your style of teaching from what and I've not had a bunch of exposure to it, but I've gotten to engage with you enough in learning spaces in front of students that I kind of pick up on that.
I do think I hold high expectations for my students. In fact, I've witnessed a couple of students that are in my OJT class that they probably came in thinking, this teacher's crazy. Like, why does she have expectations that are so extremely high for me? Like, they're almost nearly unreachable. And of course, you're going to have students that are willing to reach for your extremely high, over-the-top expectations. And you're going to have some that are going to say, no, I'm too lazy, or I don't care, or I'm not at that place. I can't get to that place at this semester with this teacher. Doesn't mean I won't eventually, but the goal is that we reach as many as we can to get them to strive for that, because as a teacher, you hope to see their full potential of what they can be, not what they are now, because you already know you're going to already learn what they are now. But I want to get you to where I know you can be, so that you can be a contributing person to society or to a community, and you can actually give back and know that not only are you going to be in the community and live in the community, but you're actually going to be involved in the processes that go on in that community.
Boom. Nailed it. Again, shut the podcast down, cut down. But that, and that, I'm a lazy student. Always been a lazy student. I'm a C's, B's, and a couple D's make degrees type of like attitude towards stuff. And the learning of mechanisms to operate in the real world through a school environment is something that we miss out on, and not just in the ways of like, oh, well, you can balance a checkbook and you can, understand how to cook. It's like not that, but how to like cope yourself with the world around you. And so even in that position where you may have a student that's saying, I don't want to strive for this, I don't want to reach around for this, and they're just like, if it's for reason A, they're just plain lazy. They're going to find the lazy way to still try and strive for what you've pushed them to.
Yeah.
So even if they may not follow the path that you may have laid out for them, ultimately, they're going to start carving their own path just because you put the pressure on them.
I think so. I think, they're going to learn something no matter what. And I always tell the students that, even if you learn something that you don't necessarily like that you learned, like, oh, I hated this job. Like, okay, but you still learned something. Now you're not going to go. You learn that that's not what you want to do after high school. That's actually a valuable lesson, right? That's not a field I want to go into. Okay, good. Don't go waste $30,000 on some type of training or degree or in a career for 5 years that you hate.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So, I mean, I hope they see that as a valuable lesson. And I don't know. I always tell students, like, as long as you're gaining some life lessons or golden advice out of life, it's okay. You don't have to like everything you're doing as long as you're gaining some lessons and golden advice from it,
So what was your professional path that got you to this point? I mean, was it a mix of different positions at different levels using different skill sets, or was there one like very linear path and then it dropped off and now I'm a teacher?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I actually did a lot of weird jobs. I got into economics thinking I really thought I was going to like it. I wanted to work for the stock market. I wanted to manage people's money. But then I realized that I felt like it was a little bit too money hungry type of job.
Somebody's
and not,
got ethics.
Yeah, too much like I was going after making money and not enough about helping other people. So then that's where I changed directions to the public health degree. However, public health is filled with soft money and grant money and all the programming that gets cut when we cut budgets.
Yep.
So I felt like after working in health departments for a few years, like, I don't like this. Like, I don't like not knowing whether I'm going to have a job or whether I'm going to have to change jobs just because this job ran out of money. So I did that. And then I actually got into PTA school for a little while, and I was like, no, I don't like this. Like, it's helping people, but I just don't like it. It didn't feel right. And then I did some just some random, odd jobs and retail jobs. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to try working as an aide in a school and see if I like it. And I did. I liked it. So then I just ended up meeting a couple people along the way that were by networking.
Yep.
And then those people helped connect me with the right people to be able to get a provisional license because they realized, okay, well, she does have business experience. Oh, she does have healthcare experience. So she would be eligible for a provisional license if she really thought that this is something she wanted to do. And I don't know, it's kind of weird. I was also unemployed for a small section of time that people don't actually really know about me, but I wrote a book during that time, which is kind of strange. I didn't write the book. Some people are like, you wrote a book to get famous? Like, no, I didn't write a book to get famous, especially when you're talking to high school students oh, I can buy it? Like, no, it's not really that type of book. It's more like a book that I wrote for self-reflection, and it's all about giving back to your community and being kind to other people. It's not necessarily a book that I was like, oh, I'm going to get famous off this book. It's just I wanted a project that challenged me during that time period.
Did you get famous off the book?
No. Yeah, of course. I got
you were
famous.
talking there was this
book.
other side of Jenna Jamieson that I was just lost on. I'm just double checking. Sorry.
So, I mean, I just wrote it for my own perspective and, my own enjoyment and challenge. And I knew I wanted to write a book at some point in my life. Why not do it under the age of 30?
Yeah.
So there you go.
And so I'm, at 31 now, I'm still struggling with that. Like, did I hit the marks pre 30 that I felt like I needed to hit? But it's also like, okay, and I'm in a position just because my kids are all 10. It's like I'm going to be 38, 39 years old with grown kids. And so like there's a build up and then there's a runway out. Just the same for like, okay, cool. What's 40 going to be now?
Yeah.
Placehold from 30 to 40. And then what do we do? But I don't remember where I was going about this, being a real narcissist right now, taking up all this talking time about myself. The whole idea was like, okay, well, feeling like I've not accomplished stuff because I didn't hit certain marks before 30. Was that something that you were struggling with as well? Like you felt like you weren't in some
I'd
of these
say
places you
that's
wanted
fair.
to be?
That's
Okay.
a fair assessment. I think so. Ever since I was a little girl, my dream was always to have a career. And I think I graduated college with 2 degrees and I couldn't find a job. I was applying all over the United States, couldn't find a job. Like, I felt like, why I just spent $30,000 on 2 degrees and I can't find a job. Even making, $10 an hour is about the best I can do with 2 college degrees.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was like, this is my dream to have a career, and I can't even accomplish the dream that I sought out to really go after.
Yeah.
And so I think that book probably actually helped me just give me some perspective, because I almost feel like I was trying to live a dream that society tells us we should live. Like, oh, you should go to college. Oh, you should get a job. Oh, you should get engaged. Oh, you should get married. Oh, you should have kids. And I was like, am I living the dream I want to live, or
Yeah.
am I living the dream that society keeps telling me I want to live? And oh, society says we should always look forward to our next vacation. But like, why am I not just living in the present? Like, why am I not just living? Like, I don't need a vacation to
Yeah.
look forward to life.
Yep.
Like, life is right here in front of my eyes. So I think I was kind of missing the mark a little bit, because I was missing life because I was too busy focused on, I have to get that career. I have to get that career. And when I let the pieces kind of just fall, then it's like the career eventually came. It just, I couldn't force it, and I couldn't just live up to the society goals that society had, or the goals that I wanted to have. I just had to let go a little bit.
You talk like a famous author. I'm serious, Jenna. Like, just keep doing you. I'm excited to see, like, just where, what, because you can just do whatever you want to do. I mean, there's nothing that limits you to being a teacher and not doing whatever else you want to do, which is, I said I was going to make a reference to your Facebook lines. Now I got to pull it back up so I can, so I can see.
Well, I don't think that anything is about me being famous, honestly. I
No.
actually just did an interview with the DE and WSIL, and he asked me what would be some final thoughts that I wanted to give for his piece that he was doing, and I said, well, really the goal for me is not for me to be recognized for teaching or for helping students, but to recognize that I hope the students that leave my classroom leave as a better human being than when they entered it. That is my true goal. Now, as a teacher, do I want them to learn the content? Yes. Am I naive enough to think that they're going to memorize and remember all the content? No. So, like, don't get me wrong. Yes, I want you to love business. I want you to love medical terminology, but I know you're not going to leave my class remembering it all. So if you can remember to just be kind to everyone and leave as a better human being, then that's the goal as a teacher. And I think that's not just the goal of me, that's the goal of most teachers, I hope. And I think that'd be the case for most teachers at Carbondale High School.
Have you ever done any like speaking? Like, are you in front of a crowd person at all?
I haven't really. I did some speaking when the book came out, just because there were groups that asked me if I would speak, and I said, well, sure, I'll speak, and then I'll give you a free book if you want a free book. If your group wants some books, then that's fine. But I don't necessarily like see myself as someone that's like some amazing speaker that's going to change the world or inspire thousands and thousands of people. But hopefully people will just hear me and say, oh, I think I should be kind because of all the things that she said. That would be my goal.
Right. No,
Kindness.
no Tony Robbins syndrome of needing the attention. So you actually went through the publication process and everything. Like, did you work with a publishing house, or was it self-published?
So I self-published
Okay.
with someone that helped me, actually kind of helped me with the process, with someone that was through CEO actually.
Uh-huh.
I met him, another person that I networked with. I met him through CEO, and he was actually dying, but he actually was willing to mentor me through the process. And so I used a lot of the same people and things that he did, just because he helped me through the process, not for any other reason than that. But it was interesting. He ended up dying, so it was a little depressing. So I kind of dedicated a portion of the book to him and talking about that. But that's interesting when you write a book, because I did take quite a long time writing the book and publishing it. It's just the different phases or chapters that your life literally goes through, and then how that influences what you choose to write about.
I keep wondering when is the right time to write something down, right? And what you said there, I think is key too. It's like when is the portion of the story that I'm supposed to write about done, and that I'm supposed to write about it?
Well, it's whenever you choose, right? Whenever you choose to write it down or make it possible. I don't think there's necessarily going to be a right time. You can just start, and then you'll know when it's ready to be finished, I think.
No, that's great.
I think.
I think you're right as well.
Mine was composed of thousands of Post-it notes where I just wrote random notes, and I had stuck them in a baggie. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to actually put this to a notebook and write it.
So you would just write on note like sticky notes and just stuff them into a bag.
I have all those sticky notes still, and all the process. Like I typed the book in Microsoft Word. Literally.
To have an artifact like that, to go with the end result, that seems special.
Yeah, I think, like, honestly, I don't know that I for sure knew I was going to get to the end result, and like how long the end result was going to take. Because you start projects and maybe you have an end date, but then the time frame changes and you allow it to change, and you're like, okay, it's okay if it changes. And so I think that's the point where I was like, I have to put an end date. Like, I'm going to make this done before I'm 30, because otherwise I'm going to give myself another year. And I think it was probably a 2 or 3 year process. And it's honestly, it's just a book that has lessons that I've learned in life. They're probably lessons that other people have learned as well, but they're just simple lessons. You could pick up the book and read, chapter 14, and it wouldn't make any difference that you skipped 13 chapters before. They're literally just small lessons. Probably most chapters are under 5 or 6 pages, because it's just a story that represents a time in my life where I learned a valuable lesson that I felt like I should keep track that I actually learned this.
Where do you get your pragmatism from?
My mom, maybe? My experiences. I mean, that's probably where we get, I don't know. I never been asked that, so I haven't really put much thought into it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's so, there's, you're able to follow through on the task and a mindset without seeming superficial and being very utilitarian in the process, right? So that all kind of mixes together to form this like very pragmatic Jenna.
It's probably, I have to say, it's probably just some type of genetic thing that's ingrained in me, because honestly, I was adopted when I was 3 months old. I was adopted in Calcutta. I was dropped off on the streets, and my umbilical cord was just cut with a pair of scissors, and then I was taken to a Mother Teresa orphanage.
Oh my God.
So, honestly, I mean, I don't really know my family history other than I have an awesome mom that's calling Carbondale, Illinois home because she came to SIU in the 60s and decided she loved it here and decided to stay.
It's just serendipitous. Like
Yeah.
this is life, and
Yeah.
now you're here.
This is life, and now I'm here from all the way from Calcutta, India to Carbondale, Illinois.
Do you lean on that component of your story at all, or is that a very minimal, like very small component to the person that you see yourself as?
I think it does lean a little bit just because I feel like being from Calcutta, I realize how fortunate I am. Like when I hear students say, "Oh, I hate Carbondale, Illinois. Like I hate this place. I can't wait to leave." Sometimes I'll say, "Well, I'm actually glad I'm in Carbondale, Illinois. Like I'm thankful that I'm not on the streets of Calcutta anymore. Like that I came from the streets of Calcutta and I'm here. Like that makes me feel blessed.
Yeah.
Like I'm alive. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. I'm have food on the table. I have a roof over my head. That's pretty awesome." So I think when you come from a country like that, and like I was born in 87, so healthcare wasn't that advanced to be 8 pounds at 3 months when I came to the U.S.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty remarkable that they had enough medical care to even keep a premature baby alive that was born on the streets with a, infection of the umbilical cord. So I think for me, that helps just keep me grounded that I'm like, okay, that's pretty awesome. But I do understand not liking Carbondale or not enjoying Carbondale because when you don't have those experiences, you can't relate to it as much. And I always have to relate to my students. I have to think, well, I don't have the same experiences as they do.
Mm-hmm.
So like we have to be able to remember that we all have different experiences that cause us to be who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't make you any better than me or me any better than you. It just means those experiences have produced who we are. And that's sometimes why we react the way we do. Why I'm mad about, something and why I cry when something happens. I think that's just, we're a product of our experiences.
You have a good enough hold on it to be able to make it something that other people can follow. It's like that right there, what you just presented felt like if it's not already chapter 21 in the book, it should be chapter 21 in the book.
I mean, it's true though. Like products, when you're a product of your experiences, if you went to Giant City School or you went to CMS or you went to private school versus a public school, you're going to react differently. If you had a class with 30 students versus 10 students, it just changes the perspective you get on life in that particular experience. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we have students that react and have such different perspectives on education even, It's not necessarily, we get mad because students they're not motivated.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to do this work. They don't realize how much effort I put into this lesson plan, but we forget the experiences they had on the other side at their house or, with siblings or with grandparents that make it different. And it makes it hard for them to relate to us, and sometimes it makes it hard for us to relate to them. But we have to keep that in the back of our minds so that we are empathetic and compassionate, I think, just as people. And that's why I think we have to remember to be kind.
Have you ever thought to turn your book into a video series, or to just turn your thoughts and the way that you're approaching ideas in our conversation into a video series?
I think I've thought of lots of things that I'd love to do, but however, with that being said, I think time, there's only so much of it. So I think if you asked any coworker or any friend or my mom or my husband, why don't you have more time? It's because I bleed too much time into every project I do in life.
Mm-hmm.
So as a teacher, I bleed too much time into that specific career.
Mm-hmm.
When I did the book, I bled so much time into doing that book. So yes, would I love to do a video series? Yes, if I had someone that could help make sure I could have a schedule or an
Yeah.
assistant that was making me do all the different planning that it takes. I think we run out of time, and I think another issue is just when people ask me to do something, I say yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm not a no person. I am not a no, I won't help you type person. I am guilty of saying yes too much.
Uh-huh.
And then it leaves me with very little time. So that's probably why I don't have anything different that represents beyond a book. The only reason I have a book is because I was unemployed, right?
I think that's being unemployed at certain points in times, pre 30, post 30, whatever. I think is something that has not been sold to, our generation or upcoming generations or whatever it may be, in terms of being able to pursue passion and turning passion into something executable as career, right? And that like really not having a structured 9 to 5 or 40 hours a week
Yep.
or whatever it may be, where you're just exhausting yourself on the task of pursuing your own financial interest to pay rent and food, that you never cross over into writing that book, starting
Yeah.
that podcast, doing
Yep.
whatever.
Well, it goes back to what society tells us we should do.
Yeah.
We should work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
We should work 8 to 4. We should have a 40-hour-a-week job. So then we forget about all those passions and those hobbies because we're too busy living that life that society has paved and told us we should potentially feed into.
How is that compounded being a woman in society just as well?
I'm not sure necessarily that it has been compounded for me personally. I think it has for other people. In fact, I would say I've seen where I think women have maybe taken a specific route because of the way society views the path that maybe they thought a woman should take.
Yeah.
However, I'm a pretty optimistic person, if
Yeah.
you couldn't tell. So I would say I think we've made some advancements
Yeah.
towards, making strides for women. In fact, the fact that as a little girl I thought I wanted a career and that I could have a career, I
Yeah.
think that's pretty remarkable, honestly, because there were probably women before me, maybe 20, 30, 40 years, that didn't enter their mind. That didn't enter their mind at all because that wasn't what society said they should do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, we're making strides. We're probably not making strides in such a way that many people would like to see,
That's
or at the rate that people want to see. But if you sit back and you look at things in different ways or from different perspectives, you can always find some pros and cons.
mm-hmm.
No matter what, I think you can.
Yeah.
Now, I know there'd be people that would argue otherwise, but you have to be able to see the optimism in life, or else, especially right now with all the things that are going on in the world, I think if you can't look at the positive, you're going to put yourself in a deep hole.
What I'm most appreciative of about your perspective is that it is positive without being toxic positivity. And I imagine that you probably have about as much time for toxic positivity as I'm willing to give to it
Yeah.
as well. I mean, how do you view the juxtaposition between your type of positivity, which I'll just call pragmatic positivity, because I
Okay.
again, it's utilitarian, it is effective, it is executable positivity, that you take this energy of thinking that the world can be better and you turn it into action in any number of different ways that you do, versus people who just say, oh, it's okay, just look on the bright side, everything's fine, no, really, it's okay, when it's not, and they're not putting any effort into actually fixing what's wrong and finding the pragmatic positivity in something.
And I think that's key. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's key for you to be able to think positive, but thinking positive means action. Action is the most important word you can put into your vocabulary when you're a young adult or you're an adult in general, because you can't just talk and say you want all these things. And that's something I talk about with high school students all the time when we talk about goals or what you want to do with your life or what your interests are, what your passions are. those have to be turned into action, though. If we don't set foot and put our mind in a way that we're like creating action or creating change, then what are we doing? Like, what's the point? There's no point in just saying, I want to do this or I want to make the world a better place. Okay, whatever. But if you're not doing it, then what's the point of you even saying it? And nobody really wants to stand behind you or support your causes if you're not willing to necessarily show the action. And I think that's vital as a teacher, is you just have to be able to mentor and provide examples to students of where you've actually made a difference, because they don't want to hear you just say all the things that they could do or what they should do. But if you can back up with stories or examples that demonstrate those traits, they're much more likely to buy in to what you're asking them to do. And I think that's important.
So I've been humbled enough to get to speak to your classes in some way, shape, or form on multiple occasions. CEO, OJT. I don't get invited to a whole lot of those because, just like last week, I'm not vulgar, but I'm also not exactly like puppies and rainbows about what the future holds for folks. It's like, tell them exactly what you talked about. You're gonna work jobs that you don't like, or be put in positions where you have issues, and you're going to have to work your way through those things and make decisions along the way that are in your own best interests.
Yep.
Who have you been able to find in that you've got just some examples, and it doesn't have to be specific people. It can be examples of kind of some talks that you've had from folks, but that you have seen executed with your students in whatever program that you think really fits the mold of, like, yeah, this is the valuable information that these students need to have. Like, thank goodness somebody else is out there being just as pragmatic in the conversation.
No, I think the whole point of me bringing in speakers is to provide real life examples of what life is like, because I think so often students have a unrealistic expectation of what life is going to be like. And so my goal is that I bring in some real life speakers. And I've had, to be honest, I've had amazing speakers in my classes. Like, I don't think there's a single speaker I've had that I can't say, okay, yeah, those students got a golden piece of advice. Now, is every piece of advice perfect? No. But that's perfect, because that's how life is. You're literally not going to have a perfect speaker or a perfect wedding or a perfect anything.
Yeah.
Because that's not how life is. So that's what I love about having speakers. And I mean, there are countless numbers of speakers that I've had that I could say were amazing, but even the ones that I wouldn't say were amazing were still amazing because the students still learned something from them. And I think, even if they soaked up one piece of information from that speaker that was less amazing, maybe to them, they still gained something. And that's the key, each day in life, is that we go out and we kind of soak up new information, or we soak up something that's going to influence our life in one form or another.
You just keep hitting home runs. And and what's nice is when you talk about this and as conversational as your descriptions of these simple yet vital steps and actions that people can commit to, it doesn't sound like your typical BS platitudes. Which again, and like if this was a conversation where I felt like Jenna's just out here selling lines and like we're getting the motivational speaker dig, I'd be like but that's not where we're at. Like, this is, and like you're having this conversation in a similar manner with these students day in, day out. Like, I feel like you're going to be one of those people that students will look back to and be like, Miss Jamieson like had that impact on me, like, because she just kept having these talks day in, day out, and we couldn't get away from them. And she always had something to tell us, but it always meant something when she talked.
I think that is the goal. I think that the here and now, like right now, if you came to my classes,
Yeah.
like it's not like, oh, Mrs. Jamieson is feeding me great information. Like I love Mrs. Jamison's class. In fact, it's probably more like, oh, I hate Mrs. Jamison's
Right.
class. I wish I wasn't in her class anymore. And that's not the goal. My goal is never for you to leave my class or enter my class and be like, oh, I hate this content or I hate this class. But my goal is to make you a better person in the classroom and outside of the classroom, because after all, it's going to help you down the road. Like that's the goal. You have to figure out what's going to help you in the future, because the here and now isn't going to get you to where you want to go. And so for me, hopefully in 10 years or 20 years, they realize like, oh, those speakers that she had, those actually did help me. Or when she told me I had to come up with questions, oh yeah, that actually helped me because it taught me that I need to, think on my feet a little more, or think outside of the box, or that I need to be always listening so that I am trying to figure out what I can glean from this conversation or from this speaker. That is what I hope they learn. I don't necessarily care if they learn it in my class, but if they can remember it and use it later in life, that's golden. That is golden.
And that's the way to just phrase it too. It's like it's just golden.
It is. It really, that's golden as a teacher. That is what you want. Oh, well, if they didn't learn your content necessarily, not that you don't want them to. Oh, well, if they didn't necessarily get everything the way it should have been done or ask the right questions, but if they can learn to ask the right questions in 10 years when they're at a job interview or they're out in the world in a community living their life, that's good. That's what's going to help them contribute to society or to another community on a board or, wherever they're at in that stage of their life.
How many, what are some of the nonprofit activities, whether they're now or previous ones that you've been involved in, that you really enjoyed?
So one that's coming up, so we're getting ready to stuff backpacks for the Boys and Girls Club and for Carbondale High School, and it's something I think I've done for 5 years now, and it's my favorite thing to do in the world. But it's just buying backpacks, and I print off a ton of educational quotes, and we decorate them, and we stuff those in the backpacks. And the goal is just to provide a backpack as well as a little piece of paper that gives some inspiration to a student that probably needs something besides just the backpack. And so, and what's cool about the backpack project is it has nothing to do with me. It's students helping students.
Yeah.
So Key Club comes in, Circle K of SIU comes in, they work together, both Kiwanis organizations, and they're decorating the quotes and they're putting the school supplies and the quote in the backpack, and then those backpacks end up in the hands of students that really need them. So you have amazing students that are willing to help those students that need that extra help or support because they're not necessarily getting the support they need, like a backpack, which many take for granted, and we don't realize that a backpack really truly helps with a student's success. And I think that's really important because there are so many things in the world that we take for granted, and I think probably COVID even exemplified that a little bit even more, is to remind us all the different things that we take for granted on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, again, I can't remember if I may have talked about this with William a couple episodes ago. It's just like there are things that every little bit of help like means and symbolizes something to folks. Like, our family, at the start of the pandemic, when I was still unemployed, like we ate Boys and Girls Club meals every night that we could, like, and what extra food we got, like that got stashed away, and like it was a real helpful like thing, right? And for the twins to get to participate in community in that particular way, because like you've got to know, you know, I think there is something important about knowing why you're giving that is part of receiving, right? Like
Yeah.
what is going to motivate, you know, folks to, when they are capable of doing so, when they're in a position to be able to give back, it's like, well, having received is a very valuable motivator in that community service. So I appreciate that position that like you're taking on both sides of things, that it's not just about the folks that are coming in and doing the giving, but it is the motivation for the folks receiving on the other end, and not from, you know, this, you know, problematic position that the United States has had for you know, centuries of, well, if you don't have it, it's because you didn't work for it. It's like, that's not, you know, more and more clear every day that that's not what it is. Like, you got to work for it, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be lucky enough to get it, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah. And I think you bring up good, valid points, but like just realizing that as a giver and a receiver, you actually, both people get something out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we always think of things like that, but we should. And like, I think, and especially if you think about just in terms of your community, if you're willing to give back, what you'll receive just from giving back or from helping someone else is far greater than you'll realize, I think.
How long did you work for Carolyn for?
Probably a year and a half ish.
Did she have any influence over
She
this
I
side of you?
think
Because I mean, this sounds very Carolyn-esque. Like
she could have. She did actually help me get involved. I volunteer a ton at SIU. She did help me connect with some people at SIU in terms of just volunteering. So now, well, right now graduations are halted, but I think I've volunteered for maybe the last 8 to 10 years at SIU graduations. But I also, you know, have volunteered at the Week of Welcome for SIU. I have volunteered for Kids' Sake. There's just random organizations that, and it's not that I really care even what the organization name is, other than I'm willing to give time, because I think when you're part of a community, that's part of your responsibility.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to give time. It doesn't mean it's your favorite project or it's exactly what you want to do on your Saturday, is spend my entire Saturday at a graduation ceremony for students that I don't have a clue who they are. But you're not doing it for you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about you. That's what you have to remember when you're volunteering. You know, you're doing it for someone else, because at some point in life, there was somebody probably that was volunteering for something that you were part of, to make that day something that you enjoyed.
And I think that using SIU graduation as an example is a very it takes away the charitable component of it, right? Because all too often we think of volunteering in terms of this, you know, charitable act or charitable function, when really what we should be seeing at is, you know, somebody that's being willing to help complete or work to complete part of somebody's life, right? So whether it is somebody working at a food pantry helping to, you know, complete one part of somebody's life simply by providing food and sustenance, or whether it is volunteering at you know, something with pomp and circumstance that is a graduation ceremony that is really, you know, more symbolic than it is functional, but nevertheless is a completing component to somebody's life and really means and matters for folks.
I think that's a great point, because I've actually had people say, well, you could be volunteering at a food pantry, or you could be volunteering for organizations and different nonprofits. Why would you choose SIU? There's no reason for my choosing SIU other than I'm willing to volunteer. And, you know, if someone from a different organization asked me to volunteer, or it was a food pantry or something, I wouldn't say no to that either. I think you bring up a valid point. We can't judge how people are volunteering. If they're willing to give back to a community or to make an influence or impact on someone else's life, that should be enough. We don't need to judge. You know, there's no need to judge. how you spend your volunteer hours or how you're giving back to a community. SIU is part of Carbondale, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
SIU is part of the success of our region.
Yeah.
So without the volunteers, without the people that give time, SIU wouldn't be the success that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be willing to remember that. Doesn't mean you agree with every decision that SIU makes or that you love everything about SIU. Doesn't matter. You still do put in the time so that you can help with the success of your community and your region.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I feel wholeheartedly, is that you just have to be willing to volunteer. And I actually wish that I could require, some volunteerism and things like that, because I think it's so important for us to incorporate or encourage young people to be willing to volunteer. That's how communities survive, not just Carbondale, Illinois, but all of rural America, which is where most people live.
Mm-hmm.
That's how those small communities survive, is through the connections and the togetherness that is built through volunteering and working together to build stronger communities.
It's literally that easy. It's like you got to give up some time if you want this to be good for everybody.
I mean, it is truly that easy. Now, can we convince everyone to do that? Probably not. Can we still keep doing it? Should we still keep doing it? Should we still keep encouraging others to do it? Yes. Yes, I think we have to, in order to just keep smaller regions and areas going.
Usually, when we get towards the end of the podcast, I start I start kind of poking towards kind of a wrap up sentiment that is like just a nice block of like, this is a lesson to take away from this podcast. This whole podcast was just pure lessons. So I'm going to flip the script on that one. Have you always been a runner?
So no, I actually hated running probably 8 or 10 years ago. I hated running. It wasn't anything. I have always enjoyed working out, I'll put it that way, but I didn't enjoy running. However, I was doing mostly workouts inside, just like video workouts,
Mm-hmm.
and I started to hate them. And I love being outdoors, like hiking and doing stuff like that. That's like my number one, like if I have free time, that's what I would want to be doing.
Uh-huh.
So then I just decided that, well, I don't usually get to hike that much or be outside that much, because that's just the nature of my life and my job.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided that I would take up running to allow myself a little more outside time. And so that's kind of why I do it. But the same with running and working out, really it's just for myself to have some personal goals. It's not necessarily, I don't think, that I love working out. I don't necessarily love working out, but I do need the de-stressor. I think I am a OCD kind of like perfectionist type person. So.
You can say high strung. You can say high strung. Don't be afraid of the words. No.
I definitely would call myself OCD, and I definitely would call myself a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So I think to keep myself balanced, I have to have something that's going to give myself a little bit of time. So 5 a.m. it is to run so that I can get it done before I go to work and still be able to stay late at work and finish what I need to finish.
5 a.m. Yeah. The self-discipline is just grossly off the charts. I can't do it. I can't do it. I love waking up at 5 a.m. to realize it's 5 a.m. and then go back to sleep. Big fan.
Oh.
Big fan. Oh my gosh.
I think it just helps prepare me for the day, though.
Yeah.
Like to get up, get motivated. Like then by 8 o'clock, I have the energy to get through the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Now, do I make it till 11 or 12 at night? I do not. And there are other people that make it to 11 or 12 at night and they can still think clearly.
Yeah.
That's not me. I can't think clearly at 11 or 12 at night. And if I am up doing stuff at 11 or 12 at night, it's probably not going to be my best work.
Oh, that's great. Just shut it down. We hit 8 o'clock. It's game over. Tie it up. We're moving on. Well, that man, there's like 30 seconds left till we hit the hour mark. And I'm not usually a big stickler. Oh no, we got to hit this. We got to hit that. This has been a really, really awesome conversation. I had no expectation coming into this, like how we were going to talk about stuff, what we were going to talk about, whether you were going to approach the subject of your name or not.
How could I not?
You're like, I live this. It's like I still eat Christopher Columbus jokes all day. I can't. How many messages I got. They're like, it's not your day anymore. It's it's Columbus Day. Ha ha. Anyway, it's so I can't even scratch the surface of your what no doubt you had to go through. So we don't have to go back down that rabbit hole. I'm just filling time at this point. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm actually interested to go and watch some of your other podcasts now, just to see all the different conversations you've had.
Absolutely. Well, and that's another cool part with the podcast. Like, I'm not always just like, I don't reach out to people like, hey, watch my podcast and then come do my podcast. It's like, if you've never done this before, it's kind of all the better. Like, if the only guide to the format is like me putting the format in place, like, it's almost like that's a cleaner, more organic conversation that provides a really good media piece on the other end.
Yeah, I agree. I had no expectations or coming into this, and I had no idea what I had agreed to do. So that could have been scary.
Hey,
but I wasn't too scared.
We're now on the other side of things. We're 1 for 1 on the favors of, I don't know what I just got myself into. When you asked me last week, like, I didn't even pay attention to like when you needed me to like talk. You were just like, I need you to talk. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then like, I didn't realize until you sent the email follow up. I was like, oh shit, that's tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I better make sure I put the time and date again, so he realizes that it was like tomorrow that he agreed on. And then I told my husband, I was like, he's actually really saved the day many times for me, because every time I need a speaker last minute, well, I know who to go to, because Nathan's always willing to fill in.
I'm a pinch hitter, man.
He doesn't mind being filled in. He doesn't mind filling in last minute for my classes. And you always have amazing advice to give the students. So that's actually what's so amazing about having you as a guest, is just the fact that you can provide real life, advice that's not sugar-coated. So that's my goal. I don't want it to be sugar-coated. Right.
No, I mean, just try to get some kids to absorb some PG rated shit talk. I mean, if they can go along with that. I mean, these, half your students are working in industries where they're having real life conversations. Mm-hmm. Like your folks that are that's working at a trucking business, or the ones that are working in restaurants or whatever it may be. Like, they're exposed to adult ass conversations. Mm-hmm. Like, period.com, point blank.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody's just going to come in and pander to them as, oh, students, and here you go, it's like, it's a disservice. And like, kudos for not doing your students a disservice. Like,
yeah, they have to get the real life experience from people that are living real life. And honestly, coming from me as a teacher, they don't really think that I'm real life. Like, they don't think that I'm real life. They think of real life like the outside world, or what's it going to be like after I graduate high school, even though high school is still real life.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment, or you're in those shoes, it may not feel like the outside world or the real world, but that's why we bring in amazing people like you.
Oh, hush. I don't usually end on the self-absorbed point of, hey, cheer Nathan, but here we are doing the outro. Episode 19, Jenna Jamieson, such a phenomenal talent that we have here in Carbondale. Even more exciting to know that she gets to influence the next generation of folks that will either contribute back to our community or somewhere else. And undoubtedly, whether she may fully understand it or not, it'll be a lot to do because of her influence. That said, have a good one, ladies and gentlemen, whatever that one may be.